Let me be clear, hate crime is a scourge on communities and will not be tolerated, and that's why we're committed to reducing all crime, including hate incidents, and are on track to recruiting 20,000 extra police officers.
Matt Weston.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. According to the Office for National Statistics, nationally we've seen an increase, a six-fold increase in hate crime across the last decade. Locally, in the recent police efficiency, effectiveness and legitimacy inspections of Warwickshire Police, criticism was made of the way in which the force support victims in the aftermath of such crimes. This was felt by a constituent who was physically and racially assaulted. His assailant was charged with physical damage of a phone after Warwickshire Police failed to complete a case action plan sent to them by the CPS. Can the Minister advise how frequently she meets with her opposite number in the Home Office, and what is being done to arrest this rise in violent crime?
Well, firstly, Mr. Speaker, I'm personally committed, and I hope the honourable gentleman will see this, to ensuring the best possible response to these terrible crimes, all crimes in fact. There is an online hate crime hub which police can now directly work with. It's called True Vision, and in the constituent's case he mentions, where victims of online hate can submit reports and also get the right support, which is equally important, and that is there on both sides for the police also.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In his question, the Honourable Member for Warwick and Leamington Spa did not include hate crimes committed against women. Yet we know that the Nottinghamshire Police Force is doing some great pilot work recording misogyny as a hate crime in the incidents that it encounters. Can my Honourable friend the Minister update us on how that pilot is going, whether there are plans to roll it out further, and also what progress the Home Office is making with their work and consultation on public sexual harassment, which is one of those significant crimes which impacts women every day?
Well, I'm very interested in both of those issues, the Right Honourable Lady would please to know. In regard to the consultation on public sexual harassment, that's been completed and I'm looking at that currently. In regard to misogyny as a hate crime, I'm aware of the Nottinghamshire Police work, and it's absolutely right that a number of police forces are choosing through their own volition to report those particular crimes, and I'll update the Honourable Lady further in writing because there is more to say.
Secretary Annalise Dodds.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd first like to welcome the new Minister for Women and Equalities to her place. With reference to the previous question, of course, making misogyny a hate crime is something that the government has stood against until now, when it was pushed by a Labour Police and Crime Commissioner in Nottinghamshire, but we hope the tide may be turning. Now, the Minister a moment ago referred to some of the statistics on hate crime, but not the most concerning. One was mentioned by my friend: violent hate crime, 6 times higher today than 10 years ago. Also, hate crimes that are reported up by 269% in England and Wales since 2010, and the highest number of religiously motivated hate crimes ever recorded this year. What is the government going to do about this?
Yeah. Well, firstly, the Honourable Lady will know we have some of the strongest legislation to tackle everything that she's mentioned, including religious hate crime. And in fact, over the last 6 years, the Places for Worship Protective Security Funding Scheme from the Home Office has awarded 323 grants of around 8 million directly in regard to religious hate crime. But I'll be very clear, I'm personally committed to the best possible response by every force on hate crime.
Anna Bardell.
DWP's new progression offer will help claimants on universal credit identify opportunities in their current role or a new role. We've also increased the national living wage, reduced the universal credit taper rate, and increased the work allowance to ensure work pays.
Anna Bardell.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The current PM famously insulted millions of mums across the UK during the pandemic when he showed a total lack of understanding of the pressure they were under and the discrimination they faced in the workplace. It's probably lost on a billionaire PM, but his Tory government is overseeing the second most expensive childcare in the developed world. According to Pregnant Now Screwed, 62% of parents pay the same or more for childcare as their rent or mortgage, and now the cost of living crisis will only worsen that. What real action is she and the new Prime Minister going to take? And can she tell me, will she and he be in post long enough to actually do anything?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Childcare is an important issue. We've doubled the childcare to 30 hours since 2010 for working parents, with a universal offer of 15 hours and covering 85% of childcare costs under universal credit. We've also had much discussion in recent weeks about childcare ratios, and I'll assure the relevant Minister writes to you with more detail.
Harriet Baldwin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. One workplace where women need support is actually the other place, where 1/8 of the seats are reserved for men only. Will the Minister support my hereditary peerage's female succession bill and get this anomaly changed?
Well, I thank the Honourable Lady for her question and her impressive campaigning on this issue. I was very privileged to be in the chamber as she's made some of her speeches this year, and I will look into this issue and make sure I write to her about it.
We now come to Secretary Annalise Dodds.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last month, the new Minister for Women and Equalities told investors in New York that the government was going for growth in a big way. She said of that economic strategy, and I quote, "We know it is bold, we know it comes with risk, but in these volatile times, every option, even the status quo, is risky." 1 month on from the catastrophic mini-budget, can the Minister explain what impact going for growth had on women's finances?
I thank the Honourable Lady for her question. We have been putting lots of cost of living support for families and for women in particular, and we'll write to her further about this issue.
Annalise Dodds.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm very disappointed by that brief response, because today we've found out from the latest statistics that women need over 12 times our average annual salary to buy a home. And our average real terms wages have plummeted by almost £600 a year since 2010. The government has simply removed the possibility of home ownership for millions of women. In her speech last month, the Minister described the UK as Europe's unicorn factory. Isn't her government Britain's chaos factory, with working women paying the price with lower wages and lost mortgages?
I would completely dispute that characterisation of this government. Not only has this government taken comprehensive steps to financially support people this year, targeting support of vulnerable households and families and putting in place an energy price cap, but also we've increased the national living wage, we've changed the universal credit taper rate, we've taken a number of steps to help people with their own finances and will continue to do so.
SNP spokesperson Kirstin Oswald.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This Tory government has committed to an employment bill at least 20 times, but it's nowhere to be seen. And meanwhile, labour market inequalities become all the more acute, especially in this cost of living crisis. So the Minister could tell us she'll fix the sick pay system, introduce the day one right to flexible working, improve parental leave and pay, strengthen protections against pregnancy and maternity discrimination, but her government is making a choice not to do these things. It's a real contrast to the Scottish Government's recent Building a New Scotland paper, setting out how an independent Scotland would deliver fair working practices. So why does this Tory government support inequality in the workplace?
Well, I thank the Honourable Lady for her question. I think actually the changes in flexible working that we saw in the pandemic have been helpful to the women. This government has taken action in consulting on flexible working. It is a matter for the Bays Department. I will ensure the relevant Minister writes to her about this issue.
Greg Smith.
Three, sir.
This government and I are absolutely committed to supporting women's sport at every opportunity, pushing for greater participation, employment, commercial opportunities and visibility in the media. We want to continue to work with stakeholders to ensure that all aspects of women's sport continue to flourish. I welcome the W Series in providing equal opportunities for women to compete competitively in motorsport, and I also recognise organisations such as Motorsport UK and the British Women
Racing Drivers Club are taking forward to increase women and girls' participation within the sport?
Thank
you, Mr. Speaker. I'm grateful to my honourable friend for that answer. As you said, the all-female W Series Championship is another jewel in the crown for British motorsport, won for the third time this year by British driver Jamie Chadwick, but has sadly had to curtail the season by 3 races, with the sad reality that women's sports like the W Series have much lower funding available than their male counterparts. Can my honourable friend commit to working with the W Series to help them continue to support women drivers, engineers and mechanics into motorsport?
My honourable friend is a fantastic champion for motorsport, and as he knows, I'm more than a little bit of a petrol head. I approach motorsport with an enormous amount of enthusiasm and almost no talent, which is probably the problem. I would also like to add my congratulations to Jamie Chadwick, because I did watch it and it was a phenomenal drive. It is disappointing that the season was cut short, Mr. Speaker, and we want the women's sport to thrive. The government is unable to intervene directly, but DCMS is working with the wider support sector on commerciality of women's sport and how it can be promoted.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. One way to encourage more women into motorsport, and indeed every job and every industry, is to make workplaces endometriosis friendly. 1 in 10 women have endometriosis. It has a huge impact on their workplace. What encouragement can the Minister give for companies to adopt the charity Endometriosis UK strategy to make all workplaces endometriosis friendly?
I couldn't agree with the Honourable Lady more. I think women's health issues are coming to the fore in the workplace, and whilst I don't have the level of detail to absolutely commit exact policy, I'll get the Department of Health to write to her about that.
Christine Jardine.
Number 4, please, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We are committed to commencement of this provision of the Equality Act. Our consultation on the detail of implementation closed on the 18th of August 2022, and we're analysing responses before taking further steps. We expect to introduce regulations and prepare a comprehensive guidance prior to commencement in England and Wales in due course.
Christine Jardine.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And can I welcome the Minister to her place? Can I say that access to public buildings is one of the issues which my constituents most often bring to me, because those who have a problem with accessibility feel they are excluded in many ways. And I know that in England and Wales there are almost 500,000 wheelchair users who are awaiting the results of the consultation for their own homes as much as for public buildings. So I welcome the Minister's statement, but can she assure us it won't be put aside in recent chaos?
I thank the Honourable Lady for her question. This is something that we have committed to. Obviously, it's important to properly address the cost implications of implementation, given everything that's happening, and we'll do everything we can to further this piece of work.
Philip Oliver.
Number 5, sir.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ensuring that everyone can access world-class education remains a priority. 2021 saw record HE progression rates for disadvantaged white students who had free school meals. This government is investing £3.8 billion more in high-quality education, skills and training provision, leading to good outcomes for young people and skills needed for economic growth, whichever good quality route that they choose.
On the government's own figures, the percentage of state school pupils getting a higher education place by ethnicity is Chinese 72%, Asian 55%, Black 49%, Mixed Heritage 41%, and White 33%. Is the government concerned about these widening disparities, and if so, what is it going to do to level up university entry?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As a meritocrat, I don't believe in positive discrimination, but a society where people are judged on their character and ability. Access to HE should be based on a student's attainment and their ability to succeed rather than their background. Now, 2021 saw a record high number of white students who received free school meals progress onto higher education, as I said. But since then, since the report of the White Working Class Pupils Have Been Let Down report, we've tasked the Office for Students to refresh their entire access and participation and to look into this.
Villiers.
Question number 6, please, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For pupils with complex needs, high needs education funding is increasing by £1 billion in 2022 and 23 financial year, bringing total needs funding to £9.1 billion. The department also provides £27.3 million per annum to deliver grants to support low-income families raising disabled or seriously ill children and young people.
Teresa Villiers.
I very much welcome that answer and that support, but constituents who are parents of disabled children so often tell me that they feel it's like an obstacle race and there are so many hurdles put in their way to get the support they need for their children, both at home and at school. Can the government make it easier to access this essential SEND support?
My honourable friend raises an important question. Now, the SEND and AP Green Paper proposals aims to improve experiences and outcomes of children and young people with SEND and within a fairer and more sustainable system. We are investing £301.75 million jointly with the Department of Health and Social Care to transform Start for Life and family support services in 75 local authorities across England.
The worst cost of living crisis in memory, it is becoming increasingly difficult for parents to provide important life experiences for their children. Springfield House in Birmingham is a wonderful SEND school which many students across Coventry North West attend. For many years now, they've provided away nights for pupils, giving children the chances to spend time away from home with their peers in a safe environment. Now, because of government cuts, this away night is being axed. So will the Minister speak to her counterpart in the Department of Education to ensure that families in Coventry do not lose this much-needed service?
I thank the honourable lady. The government's doing some amazing work, and if I can just point her and constituents from across the House to a fantastic website that we have, which is governmentsupport.co.uk, where it demonstrates the great services open to people who are having difficulties at the moment.
The Topicals, Sarah Green, Topicals.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I recently met...
Mr. Speaker, I'm delighted to have been appointed as Minister for Women and Equalities. As the Prime Minister said yesterday, this government will bring compassion to the challenges we face, put people's needs above politics and reach out to communities across the country. My priority will be delivering our groundbreaking Inclusive Britain strategy, our cross-government work to improve the lives of disabled people and breaking down barriers to opportunity for people from all backgrounds up and down the UK.
Sarah Green.
Thank you for that answer, Mr. Speaker. I recently met with the chair of the Cheshire Mosque Committee, who'd recently been told that the medical examiners in our area will only be available 5 days a week and not at the weekend, which will cause significant problems for our Muslim and other religious communities who bury their loved ones as soon as possible following a death. Will the Secretary of State meet with me and my constituent to find a way forward to ensure the new system does not infringe the rights of religious communities?
Mr. Speaker, I didn't fully hear the question, but I think if she wrote to me in more detail about what she required, I'd be able to follow up in better detail.
Michael Fabricant.
Topical 2, sir.
Well, just give the question.
Oh, sorry. I didn't know he got onto topical. So, back in the 1990s, a colonel in the Royal Marines once said to me, he would rather have a gay Marine alongside him who can shoot straight than a straight Marine who can't. Now, my right honourable friend will know that there was much persecution of gay people in the armed forces. Can she update us on how the LGBT Independent Veterans Review is getting on?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my honourable friend for that question. I can tell him that under Lord Etherton as chair, this important and independent review has launched a call for evidence on the experiences of LGBT veterans who served between 1967 and 2000, when LGBT people were barred from openly serving in the armed forces.
Vicky Bolscroft.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Why was the post of Minister for Disabled People demoted? What message do we think that this sends to disabled people who already feel like an afterthought from this government? And will the government reverse this decision immediately?
This continues to be an important ministerial post in government. The Secretary of State will have strategic oversight, but let me leave the lady in no doubt about how important this issue is to this government. 1.3 million more people in work, billions more in funding for children with SEND needs, a new BSL Act, Down Syndrome Act and special rules for end of life. This continues to be a very important area to this government.
Virginia Crosby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm delighted that Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm delighted that two entrepreneurs, Janet Percival from Jaspel Cider and Stacey Chatfield from Emberwood Creative, will be coming to Westminster as part of the Savitas MP Heroes Initiative. Does my honourable friend agree with me that our entrepreneurs are the backbone of our economy, particularly in places like Unismorn?
With family on the island, running businesses, including my own, I absolutely support the work that the Savitas MP Heroes have done with businesses based in Llangefni and Aberfour. I mean, it's a wonderful part of the island. Celebrating female enterprises across all of areas of the UK, and I particularly would like to take this opportunity to thank Helen Martin-McGee in particular for her excellent work in this area. And I'm also delighted to announce to date that 40% of start-up loans issued by this government have gone to female entrepreneurs.
Rosanara Ali.
Mr. Speaker, the Women's Budget Group analysis shows 100,000 lone parents, mainly women, 200,000 children, will be forced into poverty if the government raises benefits in line with average wages rather than inflation. Can ministers confirm that they will push the Chancellor to uprate benefits in line with inflation so women are not forced into further hardship because of the government's economic incompetence?
Mr. Speaker, the Honourable Lady, we know we don't make fiscal policy during equalities questions. She will have to wait for the Chancellor to give a statement to get an answer to it.
The government has an excellent opportunity to grant investment zones in South East Cornwall. What work is the government doing to ensure equality of opportunity for those investors?
The Honourable Lady is a role model to all of those female entrepreneurs in her constituency. With clear investment zone expressions of interest by different areas, and make sure I account for equality of opportunity in their conduct. This government recognises that a diverse and inclusive business ecosystem is good for investors, entrepreneurs, businesses and her society.
Dame Angela Edel.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. It's widely acknowledged that public spending cuts impact most on women. The Chancellor has signalled that he will be seeking such cuts in an effort to close the £40 billion hole his predecessor recklessly blew in the public finances. So will the Equalities Minister now undertake to publish an equality impact assessment on the November the 17th autumn statement as required by the Equality Act?
Mr. Speaker, we will be taking all due assessments on fiscal statements as we regularly do over the course of the period.
All men on!
The government rightly wants to see more disabled people in employment, but what more can the Minister say about encouraging in-work progression for those with a disability and, most importantly, getting more disabled representation on company boards to drive wider cultural change in business?
Well, I thank my honourable friend who's always been a passionate advocate for compassionate conservatism. We are looking at this issue very carefully. We're going to accept all the recommendations of the Homes Review for public appointments, and I would point him in the direction of the DWP progression work that we are doing.
Alex Davis-Jones.
Mr. Speaker, next week we come together to recognise National Fertility Week. Yesterday I had the great opportunity to meet with Fertility First, who are a fantastic charity providing information to everyone who requires fertility treatment. What more can the Minister do to ensure we get fair and equal access to fertility treatment for everyone who needs it in the UK?
I thank the Honourable Lady for raising that. That's something that I'd be very happy to meet with her to discuss in due course. She will know I've only returned to the role for a few hours, so I don't have a full answer for her, but I'm very happy to work with her on the issue.
Richards.
Mr. Speaker, what is the Secretary of State's response to the allegations made yesterday following her appointment by Ben Cohen of Pink News?
Mr. Speaker, if Mr. Speaker, if I may, I know everyone wants to start PMQs very quickly, so please forgive me if my answer is a tad longer than it ordinarily would be. I'm afraid that this particular individual is someone who uses Twitter as a tool for defamation. He has even sued people in this House, like the Honourable Member for Edinburgh West. And I think he's been sued by, pardon me, the Honourable Member for Edinburgh West. What I would like to say, Mr. Speaker, as we do begin a new era of equalities, is that the Equality Act is a shield, not a sword. It is there to protect people of all characteristics, whether they're young or old, male or female, black or white, gay or straight. We are running a compassionate equality strategy, and we should not be distracted by people who use Twitter as a way to insult or accuse members of Parliament.
Before we come to Prime Minister's questions, I'd like to point out the British Sign Language interpretation of proceedings is available to watch on Parliament Live TV. We start with questions to Prime Minister. In welcoming the Prime Minister, I call Dr. Alan Whitehead.
Question 1, Mr. Speaker.
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker,
can I just say, don't damage the furniture. Cheer him by all means, but don't damage. Come on.
Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
I'd like to congratulate the Prime Minister on his new post, and indeed as being the first Prime Minister of a South Asian heritage, which will be a cause of great pride among many of my constituents. I also have some pride in welcoming a fellow Saints Southampton supporter into number 10. During his prime ministerial campaigns, the last prime ministerial campaign he ran, he pledged to prohibit any development of onshore wind, which is now the cheapest form of power available to us in the country. Now he is Prime Minister. Will he change his mind on that point?
Prime Minister. Well, Mr. Speaker, I thank the honourable gentleman for his kind words and look forward to seeing him at St Mary's. Although I know my friend, the Leader of the House, may have something to say about our love of Saints. Look, when it comes to energy policy, I stick by what we said in our manifesto, Mr. Speaker. The important thing is, though, to focus on our long-term energy security. That means more renewables, more offshore wind, and indeed more nuclear. That's what this government will deliver.
I'm surprised, Mr. Speaker, to be asking a question, and I know you're shocked, Mr. Speaker, too, because I know that you, like many people, thought I would have already been offered a ministerial post.
Let me tell you, I didn't hold my breath. Philip Davis.
Go figure, as Joe Biden might say. Can I congratulate my right honourable friend on becoming Prime Minister? He's absolutely the right person for the job, and I wish him every success in post, and as he knows, he's got my full support. His two immediate predecessors made levelling up a key part of their agenda. Would he reaffirm his commitment to levelling up and start, as he means to go on, by approving the levelling up fund bid for Bingley in my constituency?
Well, I'm grateful to my honourable friend for his warm remarks. I can confirm he must be the only person, Mr. Speaker, who texted me to say that he did not want a job in the last 24 hours. But I can give him my cast iron commitment to levelling up, particularly in Yorkshire, which he and I share. Obviously, he'll know I can't comment on individual bids, but by the end of the year, an announcement is expected on the success, and I wish him every luck with that.
Let's come to the Leader of the Opposition, Keir Starmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and may I welcome the Prime Minister. The first British Asian Prime Minister is a significant moment in our national story, and it's a reminder that for all the challenges we face as a country, Britain is a place where people of all races and all beliefs can fulfil their dreams. That's not true in every country, and many didn't think that they would live to see the day when it would be true here. It's part of what makes us all so proud to be British. Was his Home Secretary right to resign last week for a breach of security?
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, can I thank the honourable gentleman for his kind and indeed generous welcome to the dispatch box. I look forward to Prime Minister's question time with him, and I know that we will have, no doubt, robust exchanges, but I hope that they can also be serious and grown up. So I look forward to it. Well, he asked about the Home Secretary. The Home Secretary made an error of judgment, but she recognised that. She raised the matter and she accepted her mistake. And that's why I was delighted to welcome back into a united cabinet that brings experience and stability to the heart of government. And let me tell you, Mr. Speaker, what the Home Secretary will be focused on. She'll be focused on cracking down on criminals, on defending our borders, while the party opposite remains soft on crime and in favour of unlimited immigration.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Prime Minister stood on the steps of Downing Street and promised integrity, professionalism and accountability. But then, with his first act, he appointed a Home Secretary who was sacked by his predecessor a week ago for deliberately pinging around sensitive Home Office documents from her personal account. Far from soft on crime, I ran the Crown Prosecution Service for 5 years. I worked with Home Secretaries to take on terrorists and serious organised crime. And I know firsthand how important it is that we have a Home Secretary whose integrity and professionalism are beyond question. So, have officials raised concerns about his decision to appoint her?
Mr. Speaker, I just addressed the issue with the Home Secretary, but he talked about fighting crime. I would hope, Mr. Speaker, I would hope that he would welcome. I would hope that as we look forward, he would welcome the news today that there are over 15,000 new police officers on our street. And the Home Secretary will be supporting them to tackle burglaries. While the party opposite will be backing the lunatic protesting fringe that are stopping working people going about their lives.
Keir Starmer.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I listened carefully. That was clearly not a no. We can all see what's happened here. He's so weak, he's done a grubby deal, trading national security because he was scared to lose another leadership election. There's a new Tory at the top, but as always with them, party first, country second. Yesterday, on the steps of Downing Street, he also admitted what the whole country knows. The Tories have crashed the economy, and now somebody has to pay for their mess. I say it shouldn't be working people who've been hammered time and again by this lot, but those with the broadest shoulders must step up. Does he agree?
No. Well, Mr. Speaker, the honourable gentleman talked about party first and country second. Perhaps he could explain to us why it was a few years ago he was supporting the member for Islington North. Mr. Speaker, my record is clear. When times are difficult in this country, I will always protect the most vulnerable. That is the values of our compassionate party. We did it in COVID and we will do that again.
Mr. Speaker, he says he'll protect the most vulnerable. Let's test that. The government currently allows very rich people to live here but register abroad for tax purposes. I don't need to explain to the Prime Minister how non-dom status works. He already knows all about that. It costs the Treasury £3.2 billion every year. Why doesn't he put his mouth his money where his mouth is and get rid of it.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I have been honest. We will have to take difficult decisions to restore economic stability and confidence. And my honourable friend, the Chancellor, will set that out in an autumn statement in just a few weeks. But what I can say, as we did during COVID, we will always protect the most vulnerable. We will do this in a fair way. But what I can say, I am glad, Mr. Speaker, that the party opposite, honourable gentleman, has finally realised that spending does need to be paid for. It is a novel concept for the party opposite. This government is going to restore economic stability, and we will do it in a fair and compassionate way. Starmer.
I know he's been away for a few weeks, but he should have listened to what's been going on the last 2. But anyway, I have to say, I'm surprised he's still defending non-dom status. He pretends he's on the side of working people, but in private he says something very different. Over the summer, he was secretly recorded at a garden party in Tunbridge Wells, boasting to a group of Tory members that he personally moved money away from deprived areas to wealthy places instead. Rather than apologise or pretend that he meant something else, why doesn't he now do the right thing and undo the changes that he made to those funding formulas?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I know the right honourable gentleman rarely leaves North London. But if he does, he will know that there are deprived areas in our rural communities, in our coastal communities, and across the south, and this government will relentlessly support them, because we are a government that will deliver for people across the United Kingdom. But Mr. Speaker, he mentioned the last few weeks. I am the first to admit that mistakes were made, and that's the reason I am standing here. But that is the difference between him and me. This summer, I was being honest about the difficulties that we were facing. But when he ran for leader, he promised his party he would borrow billions and billions of pounds. I told the truth for the good of the country. He told his party what it wanted to hear. Leadership is not selling fairy tales. It is confronting challenges, and that is the leadership the British people will get from this government.
Mr. Speaker, I think everyone should watch the video and make their own minds up. In public, he claims he wants to level up the north, but then he boasts about trying to funnel vital investment away from deprived areas. He says one thing and does another. But they're shouting. They're not my words. They're not my words. They're the words of the former chair of the Tory party, sacked yesterday for telling the truth about the Prime Minister. Even his own side know he's not on the side of working people. That's why the only time he ran in a competitive election, he got trounced by the former Prime Minister, who herself got beaten by a lettuce. So why doesn't he put it to the test, let working people have their say and call a general election?
Well, it'll take a long time to get through this paper if we carry on like this, Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, he talks about mandates, about votes, about elections. It's a bit rich coming from the person who tried to overturn the biggest democratic vote in our country's history. Our mandate is based on a manifesto that we were elected on, to remind him an election that we won and they lost. A mandate that says we want a stronger NHS, better schools, safer streets, control of our borders and levelling up. That is the mandate that I and this government will deliver for the British people.
Heather's not even asked her a question. You want more? Come on, Heather.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to congratulate my right honourable friend and new Prime Minister, and also to thank our previous Prime Minister for the straightforward way she has handled her resignation, and I wish her and her family well for the future. Would my right honourable friend please use this, his first appearance of the dispatch box, to make it clear to the British Medical Council and the British Dental Association that, as well as training, more training spaces opening up, that they must allow new doctors and dentists to work in the UK so that the good people of South Derbyshire can get treatment on the NHS?
Well, I thank my honourable friend for her question. She's absolutely right. I'm pleased that there are 3,500 more doctors and over 9,000 more nurses working this year than last. But she's right, and we are working to simplify the registration for dentists in particular that are not trained here to practice here, and that's how we'll help deliver a long-term workforce plan for the NHS and ensure everyone can get the care they need.
Let's come to the leader of the SNP, Ian Blackford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I congratulate the new Prime Minister on becoming the first British Asian to hold the office. The significance and the symbolism of this achievement is to be warmly welcomed by everyone. Mr. Speaker, yesterday on the steps of Downing Street, the new Prime Minister promised to bring, and I quote, compassion to the challenges that we face today. So, on his first full day in the job, let's put that to the test. A winter of uncertainty is coming, and next April we'll see a cliff-edge moment. Millions face a double whammy as the energy price guarantee is cut off, while households are hit by austerity 2.0 and a real terms cut to social security benefits that many rely on to survive. If people are actually to trust the new Prime Minister's words about compassion, will he today reassure people and guarantee that benefits will rise in line with inflation in his upcoming budget?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I thank the right honourable gentleman for his, again, kind remarks. And what I can tell him is my record on this is clear. Through the difficult times that we faced in this country through COVID, I always acted in a way to protect the most vulnerable. That's because it is the right thing to do, and those are the values of our compassionate party. And I can absolutely reassure him and give him that commitment that we will continue to act like that in the weeks ahead.
Ian Blackford.
Well, Mr. Speaker, let's test that, because as Chancellor, the Prime Minister slashed universal credit and presided over the worst levels. Well, you know, for the hard of hearing on the Tory side, I might remind them that universal credit was cut by £20 a week and presided over the worst levels of poverty in North West Europe. So I hope that he has learned from his mistakes and guarantees that benefits will rise in line with inflation. But speaking of mistakes, yesterday the Prime Minister appointed a Home Secretary who was forced to resign only last week for breaching the ministerial code, and who boasted that she dreamed of sending vulnerable asylum seekers to Rwanda. We all know why he appointed her, a sleazy backroom deal to shore up his own position. Far from being a fresh start, this is a return to the sleaze and scandal and ghosts of cabinets past. The Prime Minister promised to govern with integrity and humility. So if he has an ounce of either, will he admit his mistake and sack the Home Secretary without the delay?
Mr. Speaker, I was pleased to actually have a call last night with the First Minister of Scotland. It was important that I spoke to her on my first day in office because I wanted to express my desire to work constructively with the Scottish Government so that we can work together to deliver for the people of Scotland, and that is what I plan to do. And indeed, I hope crime is one of the things that we can collaborate on, because he will know that violent crime is rising in Scotland and police numbers are falling. Whereas here, we are increasing police numbers, Mr. Speaker. But I look forward to working with the Scottish Government on our shared challenges, because I believe in a strong, united kingdom.
Dr. Andrew Mercer.
Mr. Speaker, what a pleasure it was to welcome the Prime Minister to my constituency in the summer. He will know one of the burning issues in my constituency is the proposed waste incinerator at Westbury. With the government rightly reviewing its air quality targets, can I ask my right honourable friend to signal his intent to continue promoting public health, net zero and the environment by placing a moratorium on any more unwanted unnecessary toxic waste burners.
Prime Minister.
I can tell my honourable friend, I know he's been a vociferous campaigner on this issue as I learned over the summer. He'll know that local authorities determine these issues, but also to reassure him that all large incinerators in England must comply with strict emission limits and only receive permits if plants don't cause any damage to human health. And hopefully that is reassuring for him.
Caroline Lucas.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister's reckless predecessor took a wrecking ball to nature, prompting millions of members of the RSPB, the National Trust and the Wildlife Trust to rise up in opposition. Yesterday, he promised to fix her mistakes as well as to uphold the party's 2019 manifesto. So if he is a man of his word, will he start by reversing the green light she gave to fracking, since it's categorically not been shown to be safe, and instead maintain the moratorium that was pledged in that very manifesto that he has promised to uphold?
Well, I've already said I stand by the manifesto on that. But what I would say is that I'm proud that this government has passed the landmark Environment Act, putting more protection for the natural environment than we've ever had, with a clear plan to deliver. And I can give the Honourable Lady my commitment that we will deliver on all those ambitions. We will deliver on what we said at COP, because we care deeply about passing our children an environment in better state than we found it ourselves.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I too would like to welcome the Prime Minister to his place. Farmers in my constituency of Clwyd South are delighted that after 20 years they are once more able to sell Welsh lamb to the US market. Would the Prime Minister comment on the size and prospects of this market for our world-beating Welsh lamb?
Mr. Speaker, I congratulate my colleague on the fantastic achievement. I can tell him that market is worth, I think, something like almost £40 million over the first few years. Enormous boost for our lamb farmers. I would just encourage the 300 million US consumers to give Yorkshire Swaledale a lamb a look in as well. But I know he and I, if we disagree on that, are united on the fact that we will unequivocally back British farming and British farmers.
Janet Davey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is certainly a topsy-turvy Tory government. A few days ago, I was going to put my question to the former Prime Minister. But my inbox has been full of emails from constituents of Lewisham East writing to me about their desperate situation, of their wages simply not going far enough. I'm also receiving emails about rents going up, energy prices going up, mortgages going up, and of course the cost of living is already up. This week, my constituents are writing to me demanding a general election, and I absolutely agree with them. So can the Prime Minister tell me and my constituents when there will be a general election?
Mr. Speaker, we've already addressed that, but I would say, as I said in the summer, I said inflation is indeed the enemy. It makes everyone poorer, it erodes savings, and that's why it will be a priority of our government to grip and reduce inflation and provide support to those who need it, as we do.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This autumn, I'm launching my campaign to extend the Chilterns area of natural beauty across thousands of acres of scenic beauty, chalk streams and valuable habitats that happen to surround the wonderful town of Hitchin in my constituency. Would the Prime Minister join me in celebrating areas protected by AONB status and indeed support my campaign to potentially extend them in rural Hertfordshire?
Well, I thank my honourable friend, because I know this is a matter of great importance to him and his constituents, and he's right to highlight the benefit that natural parks and AONBs can bring to our lives and our well-being. I understand actually that Natural England is considering an extension of the Chilterns area of outstanding natural beauty, and I know my honourable friend will be vigorously taking up his campaign with them.
Richard Bargall.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I welcome the Prime Minister to his place. A nurse would have to work over 20,000 years in order to match the vast wealth of this Prime Minister. The Prime Minister knows only too well that the super-rich could easily afford to pay more in taxes. So rather than announce a new wave of cuts and austerity, wouldn't it be fairer for the Prime Minister to introduce wealth taxes on the very richest in our society?
Well, Mr. Speaker, we will always support our hard-working nurses, and that's why, as Chancellor, we reintroduced the nurses' bursary and provided more training and introduced actually very strong pay increases. But as I committed to previously, as we approach the difficult decisions that confront us, we will do so in a way that is fair and is compassionate, because those are our values, and that's what we will deliver.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I welcome my right honourable friend's determination to be straight with people about the challenges we face as a country. Last week, the Care Quality Commission State of Care report on state of care in England showed our health system in gridlock. And I hear the same from my constituents, struggling to see a GP or waiting for treatment. So can I urge him to make unblocking the NHS a priority for him and his health secretary?
My honourable friend knows this subject obviously very well from her own experience, and I thank her for the work she did previously in the department. She's absolutely right about the challenge that confronts us. It's why we've put billions of pounds into busting the backlogs and the elective recovery fund and are delivering funding and staffing to do that. But I look forward to working with her to deliver what we said in our manifesto, and that is a far stronger NHS.
Alan Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd add my own congratulations to the Prime Minister on his appointment. We might not agree on everything, but I think we can all agree a more diverse politics can only be to the good. Now, we in these benches believe that Scotland's best future is independence in Europe. Keep it coming. Mr. Speaker, I really would urge the members opposite to show a little more respect. Because it's not just us. It's not just us. It's not just the SNP. And I will not be shouted down. It's not just the SNP. On the last opinion poll, 72% of the people of Scotland want back into the European Union. So if the Prime Minister is to maintain any credibility in the eyes of the people of Scotland, how long does he think he can deny Scotland's democracy?
Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I thank the honourable gentleman for his kind words. I mean, he talked about respect. I would gently urge him to respect the result of the referendum we had on this topic. But whilst we will disagree on that issue, I can tell him that I do remain committed to working constructively in partnership with the Scottish Government to deliver for the people of Scotland.
Mark Eastwood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week I visited worried Year 3 and 6 pupils to hear their suggestions to tackle road safety, following a number of serious road accidents outside Boothroyd Academy in Dewsbury. They suggested the council should do more to help, that their parents should walk them to school to reduce traffic, and that commuters should slow down. Would my right honourable friend agree with me and with them that we all have a part to play in ensuring road safety outside our schools?
Can I say to my honourable friend, I think it's fantastic that he's engaging with his younger constituents at Boothroyd Academy on such an important issue, and I know they will welcome his commitment to supporting them. And I agree with him. There are various things we can do. There's an updated highway code which strengthens pedestrian access. Local authorities can introduce lower speed limits, and we're increasing the number of school streets which restrict motorised traffic at busy times. And I look forward to hearing progress on this issue from him.
Stephen Kinnock.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, the Prime Minister stood on the steps of Downing Street and said that he wanted to restore trust. Yet in the past 24 hours, we've seen that he's prepared to shamelessly swap red boxes for political support. And there are real serious consequences to all this horse trading. So I'd like him to be clear on this point. Did he seek or receive any advice on security concerns about the Right Honourable Member for South Staffordshire before his appointment to the government yesterday, given that he was sacked in 2019 for leaking sensitive information relating to our national security?
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, he's talking about events that happened 4 years ago, and he's right that he raised the topic of national security, because members opposite 4 years ago were busily supporting the member for Islington North. who wanted to abolish the nuclear deterrent, who wanted to leave NATO and who wanted to scrap our armed forces. We won't take any lectures on national security, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I sincerely congratulate my right honourable friend and wish him every success. Over 3 years ago, my constituent Harry Dunn was killed in a tragic road accident, and I'd like to ask my right honourable friend to join me in congratulating Harry Dunn's family for the incredible campaign they've run for over 3 years, with huge support from all colleagues across the House on finally achieving justice for Harry.
Well, I pay tribute to my right honourable friend for her role, and indeed the former Foreign Secretary as well, and indeed colleagues from all over the House for the part they've played in bringing about this outcome. My thoughts are obviously with the family, and I join in her sentiments that this is very welcome.
Daisy Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. West Hertfordshire Hospital Trust in my area is still hoping to receive funds from the new hospitals programme, the same programme that is supposed to deliver the government's so-called 40 new hospitals. There's been a lot of speculation that the new Prime Minister and his Chancellor might seek to cut infrastructure projects. So can the Prime Minister confirm to me that my local hospital trust, as well as all of the other local hospital trusts that are set to benefit from the new hospitals programme, will in fact get that money? Yes or no?
Well, Mr. Speaker, the Chancellor will set out our plans in the autumn statement shortly, but this is the government that put in place plans which will remain to significantly increase capital expenditure, and even though difficult decisions do need to be made, I think the country can rest assured that we will continue to invest in our future productivity and indeed invest in our public services like the NHS.
Wendy Bolton.
Mr. Speaker, in my Aldridge Brown Hills constituency, we're at risk of 8,000 new homes being dumped in the constituency. Will my right honourable friend use the opportunity of this Prime Minister's question to reaffirm the government's commitment to protecting the Greenbelt and to adopting a really rigorous brownfield first policy?
Well, can I say thank you to my honourable friend for her question, and I can give her that assurance. She's absolutely right. We must protect our green belt, and we are adopting a brownfield first strategy. I'm pleased we had a record number of new homes built in the last year, but it's important that we build those homes in the right places.
Ruth Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Whilst welcoming the new Prime Minister to his place, we remember that law-breaking was the order of the day in Downing Street during the pandemic. We will never forget that this current Prime Minister was fined by the police for attending a birthday party hosted by his next-door neighbour. As both a witness and a participant to that law-breaking, if the Privileges Committee investigation into the former Prime Minister calls him to give evidence, will he fully cooperate?
Minister. Mr. Speaker, of course, and I addressed these matters earlier this year.
Michael Fabricant.
Mr. Speaker, you will know that I fought hard to bring back Boris. In '97, I campaigned for Kenneth Clarke and then for Michael Portillo. So I can't always get it right. But you know, I do know about the West Midlands. I know that the West Midlands Mayor very much welcomes the reappointment of the Levelling Up Secretary, and that he looks forward to working with our new Prime Minister. So may I just ask him, what is his vision for levelling up?
Well, I thank my honourable friend for the question, and what I can say is our desire is to ensure that people, wherever they live in our fantastic country, have enormous pride in the place they call home and every opportunity to succeed. And you know what? It is the fantastic Mayor Andy Street who is delivering that for his constituents in the West Midlands.
That completes questions. Right.